So how did you enjoy part one? Did you listen to part one with Sarah and I? I trust and I hope you enjoyed it. We only got through 3 of the principles of our 9 principles. So I will say we've got a big feat today. But if you haven't listened, definitely go and take a listen to part 1 of our 9 lessons from this year, what's worked, what hasn't worked, and how you can implement that in your business and your life. And we're going to be heading into part 2. So we're going to be covering 6 more principles today, building on the 3 principles from previously. And it's going to be amazing. And just so you know, if you haven't listened to part 1, the reason I'm bringing Sarah in is because she's my co-CEO. She runs our business with us. She is incredibly strategic, has an amazing marketing mind. And I think you're going to learn a lot from her advice and her conversation that we have around lessons in the business. So let's get into it and let's cover part 2 of the 9 lessons from this year. Hey, it's Colin and you are listening to the Expert Edge podcast. I was a professional speaker for over a decade and now I focus on helping coaches, speakers and course creators to speak and sell on virtual and live stages. The Expert Edge podcast is weekly content focused on helping you build your expert business. We cover marketing, storytelling, sales, communication skills, and so much more. Thanks for taking the time to tune in and make sure you subscribe and follow us on all our social channels so you don't miss a thing. Let's listen to today's episode. Ding, ding, ding. Okay. Round 2. Fight. Oh, that's bringing back the old Street Fighter days, babe.
Yeah, I was never in your Street Fighter days. That was pre-us meeting.
Street Fighter. So good. Okay.
We definitely need to move faster this time.
Yeah, we need to move faster.
Chatting too much.
Round two. We don't fight, by the way. So
We're perfect.
Perfect. We definitely do fight.
We have robust
conversations. And sometimes they're very robust. Yes. And I learn a lot. I learn a lot. I genuinely learn a lot. It's good. How long have we been married for now, babe?
How long, babe?
18
Good
years?
job.
18 years.
Yes, well done. You're winning husband points today.
You were 12 when I got married. That was legal. All right, let's get into it. We covered 3 ideas. Part 1, we're going to try to cover 6. We've got no hope. Cover 6 in this session. What we've learned this year. Well, let's get straight into it. The next lesson for part 2, which is the 4th lesson, is you continually need to be nimble as an entrepreneur. What does that mean for us this year?
Yeah, well, I think for us is obviously social media is always changing the context of what works. So you have to learn to keep up with it. But I think as the market changes, so does your messaging and not necessarily your program, like your core expertise, but the way your program is packaged sometimes needs to adjust every few years. And I think it's easy. I know as a newer entrepreneur, I kind of was in my head of like, hey, if we can just get this set up, then we won't need to change it. And I think this year, again, in lots of contexts, and especially as the market's been shifting and also with social media, it's just been a big reminder again. It's like you never really graduate having to be flexible, having to try new things, having to make changes and adjustments. Like the business is kind of like this living organism that has to have continual adaptation for it to adapt to the environment. Yeah. So I feel like that was just a lesson that we've learnt before, but I feel like came up again this year.
Yeah. And I think like if something's not working, you need to have the courage to go to your audience and ask them like, what's missing? What's missing in this offer? If something was included in this offer that would make it a no-brainer for you, like what would that be? And, actually asking your audience. I feel like we've surveyed our audiences quite a lot over the years.
Yeah, I feel like that is something that sometimes entrepreneurs forget to do is like you think you have to come up with all these awesome ideas. And it's literally as simple as just asking your core clients or asking the people that follow you online, like, what are you actually looking for? What are you finding most challenging? What is your greatest desire in the area of your expertise? What is your greatest fear in the area of your expertise that you teach people, I mean?
Yeah.
And actually just asking them that question.
Yeah. And I think like for me, what this also has meant is going almost like looking at your programs and going, have I built this program where I am the center of the offer, or have I built this program where the product and the outcome, the result is the center of the offer?
Which is our next lesson.
Oh, is that our next lesson?
Yeah.
Let's get on to our next lesson.
That's a good pivot in. And build your programs for the results.
Lesson number 5 of 9. Build your programs for the results. One of the revelations I've had is that I think when you first start out, the most valuable thing you think you have is your time. And it's like, I know I have in the past got into a mindset of, if I can just sell my time, then that's the most valuable thing. Now, I think when you're starting out, it definitely is a valuable thing, especially if you've got.
It's the fastest way.
It's the fastest way to get someone a result. As long as obviously you've got to have the skills.
Correct.
It's not just time that you're selling,
Right.
but you've got to actually know something. This idea of like when you first build a program, a lot of the time the program is centered around you, especially as an expert, as a consultant. So it's like everyone comes to you. Everyone comes to you for advice. Everyone comes to you for the next question. And I think that as you grow your business, you have to start to transition and go like, okay,
it's not scalable.
Yeah, it's not scalable. And then you actually don't teach your clients the right thing either.
Right. You
Because,
teach them like a dependency.
You teach them a dependency of like, oh, I need to ask you, the authority, if I have permission to do this.
Yeah. Which I feel like is the main mindset you have to break as an entrepreneur, coming from, I know it was for me anyway, coming out of like an employee, feeling like you need to, work within the boxes and ask permission. And suddenly you're in this world where you have to give yourself permission to try things, to adapt, to do all that sort of stuff. So that's interesting that you say that.
Yeah. And I think I've even gone through an evolution of really challenging that in me, because I feel like I do think about when I'm building a program, I'm thinking, what is the process someone needs to go through in order to get a result? But I feel like it just went to a whole nother level this year with us adding even more coaching support, like having other coaches in our business and really looking at even more support that we can add into our programs where people can get a result, whether they talk to me or not.
Yeah, so actually taking the focus off you and putting it on the system of the program.
Correct. Yeah, putting it on the system and realizing that the clients just want a result.
Yeah.
They think they want to talk to you, but what they
who wouldn't want to do that?
Yeah, I mean, that's actually, but they think they want to talk to you, but what they actually really want is a result.
Correct.
And if they get to talk to you, for them, that's probably a bonus because,
you're awesome.
You're the authority. Like you've got some celebrity or some notoriety in your prospects' eyes. And so that's nice for them, but really what they want is a result. And so I think this principle here is key of going, have I built my program around myself? Or around a result. And so starting to move it towards going, what do I need to put in place in my program so that people get results even without me?
Yeah.
And so all really of those elements. Next one is...
You should do the next one because that's your specialty.
Yeah. So the next one is the potential and the power of partnerships.
It's 3 Ps. He's just taking a quick sip of water.
Thanks for the narration.
You're welcome. That's what I'm here for.
When I speak, I always tell people, like, if you take a sip of water, don't announce it. You don't have to. You don't go, I'm about to take a sip of water.
Except if you've got your wife on the podcast going, he's now taking a sip of water.
He is now taking a sip of water. So there we go. Now it's announced. I love it. It's funny. It's funny. Remember, there's no right or wrong on this podcast.
Good to
know. Right or wrong.
Good
whatever comes out is perfect.
That's scary.
Number 6, the potential and the power of partnerships. I know if I look over the trajectory of our business and a business's growth, I would say, 50% of the growth has come through just relationships. A good majority has obviously come through our hard work, just grit, being consistent, doing ads, all that sort of stuff. But having partnerships and relationships has been so powerful. And I had a really cool opportunity this year. Got to do some work with Jenna Kutcher, who obviously has a very large audience. And she loved the process that I took her through and what our program goes through. And she basically was she wanted to promote Sell from Stage Academy. And so that obviously was a massive trajectory in terms of our business, our brand, our positioning, all that sort of good stuff. But I think we've been doing this for years. Like, we've been doing this for so long. If I look back in the journey of our business, when we first launched Sell from Stage Academy, I was actually looking, because I'm doing a training tomorrow for our clients, and I was looking at our board, which was the first big promotional launch of Sell from Stage Academy.
Our whiteboard.
In
our office, yeah.
And it had sticky notes on there, and there was 9 podcasts that I was on in a 2-week period. and that promoted the launch of Sell from Stage Academy. 9. I was on 9 podcasts. And in my mind, that's what I was.
They were bigger podcasts too.
Yeah, I was actually on James Wedmore's podcast.
Yeah.
I had Screwed in 9 to 5. I had a few other kind of good, bigger podcasts. But I will say that, like continually just looking for relationships where there's a win-win in terms of building those, and it starts with a friendship most of the times, and you meet those people in programs. You meet those people in paid programs.
Yes.
I know that I have done quite an extensive like how-to process on how to build influential relationships. It's actually on the podcast.
I was just searching for it now. It's episode, I don't know if my glasses on, but is it
episode 211. It was released April 16, 2024. Go and have a listen to that. I think that's really tactical. If you want to build influential relationships, like people who are above you in terms of their audience or what they could bring, not just people who are, just clients. Now that can be great. It's great to partner with clients. But if you want to build influential relationships and start positioning yourself as a true authority in the marketplace, go and check out that podcast. We'll link it up in the show notes, or you can just scroll through, and 211 is the podcast. Number 7.
Yes. So I don't know if this is the main lesson, but team was basically like keeping it tight and small. But I'm not sure the phrasing of it, but I'll just give the context of it. We've basically operated with just Colin and I and maybe one other full-time team member for quite a long time. And in the last 2 or 3 years, we've now built up to a core team of 4 people outside of us plus contractors. And so that in and of itself has been a huge transition and learning to be a leader of a team. But we've hired on purpose very slowly. We hire A players. And I feel like, without tooting our own horn too much, we really take care of our team. We have an extremely high retention rate. In fact, when we go to recruit for new roles, our recruiter who's worked with us for a few years is like, you've got one of the highest retention rates of businesses that I've seen. And it's because obviously we genuinely care about people. We pay them well. We do benefits. We do all that like stuff to actually think about them, because we also know that them bringing their strengths to the business has been the thing that has grown the business. Colin, you always talk about the business is like a pie. Is that the metaphor you use?
We all eat from the pie.
We all eat from the pie. And so as the business has expanded, whether it's been through pay rises or bonus structures or commission structures or whatever it is, we've always aimed to make sure that flows onto our core team. And I feel like because of that, I mean, something that we've always said for ourselves, this is personal, this doesn't have to be you if you have a vision of a really big business, but we want a big business with a small ninja awesome team. We don't want a huge team load to manage. And I feel like the team has been the superpower this year. I feel like we've gotten amazing team members. They're all incredible at their expertise. You can't have any of them.
No one can have our team.
But we also invested, I'm not sure if you've read the book Traction and the EOS operating system, the entrepreneurial operating system. It is just a way of reporting and keeping track of things. So we worked with a contract company last year who taught us how to do all of the meeting structures and the reporting. And I think that has brought a cohesiveness to the team and constantly redefining their job description so that they have absolute clarity about what they're doing. And also when there needs to be adjustments made, making sure that they're in their superpower.
Like we've adjusted the roles quite a lot even over this year to people's strengths and going like, hey, your strength is in this area. Let's adjust the role to kind of move you towards that and move the other person into a different area. And I feel like that's worked really well.
Yeah, because we've always hired team with core values. They have high integrity. They're low on drama. They're awesome people. We always have a no drama policy in our business. Business is dramatic enough. We don't want extra.
There's enough drama going on in our life and in our business. We don't need more drama within the team. So
I feel like the lesson, at least for me, was that has been a lot of work to set up behind the scenes. It's the type of work in the business that people don't see, whether it's the investment of the contract company or going through all those processes. I feel like our team has blossomed this year, even more than previous years as well. They've also grown the business to a place that we couldn't have by ourselves.
Absolutely. And I think also like really just seeing team members as like humans.
Yeah, crazy concept.
Right? I just feel like sometimes, I don't think it's our listeners necessarily. I feel
Yeah.
like we attract very heart-centered people. But I feel like there are people out there, they just treat their employees and their team members, especially if they're overseas, like if they're, in the Philippines or in India or
Right.
something like that. Like they don't treat them well. They don't treat them as actual people.
Yeah.
They feel very disenfranchised by them or just kind of treat them like robots. And I'm like, we have a team member in the Philippines who's been with us for what, like
15 years.
it's
Yeah.
close to, it's like 12 years or something.
Yeah.
And her name's Doreen. Shout out to Doreen. She's amazing.
She's awesome.
But I'm like, I genuinely care about her. I care about her and her family. And it's like, I've always really worked hard to treat her not as like an outsider. It's like she's a core team member of our business.
Yeah.
And I genuinely care about her. And she's actually left our business for a bit, come back to the business. Like it's just been amazing because really just seeing people as people and realizing they're not robots. They can't work forever nonstop and have no breaks and all that sort of stuff. Like when you treat people well, they want to do well for you.
Yeah.
And if they don't do well for you as a performer, then they don't last in the business either. I will say, like, this is not leniency for someone to not perform.
Not at all.
At all.
Yeah. Because if you keep someone in your team who isn't performing, first of all, the rest of the team knows.
Oh, they sense it so quickly.
They're aware that they're having to carry stuff that other people aren't.
Yeah.
But I think that's what's incredible about your leadership in the business, babe, is like you are always very forward, whether it's encouragement or whether it's like something's not working.
Yeah.
We're very quick to just have open conversations about things, and as opposed to just like getting frustrated or
just pushing it down emotionally.
Yeah.
Which for me is like the no drama, because if you can catch something early, there's no drama.
Yeah. And I do think whether our team are overseas or not, like most of our team are in the US, I think it's also like not seeing them as a burden to what you're trying to achieve. They're actually your core people that you serve.
Yeah.
Once you start to develop a team, that's even a bigger priority than just clients. Not to say just clients, but if you can look after your team well, they'll look after the clients
100%.
And so I think that is something that's been a big learning curve for us to move into just a model where we kind of have assistants and people helping us, but we're kind of doing everything to grow into a team model has been big.
Yeah, it's been great. Lesson number 8 for this year. This is a little bit of unwarranted marriage advice for you. Unwarranted marriage advice. But this is something I feel like has worked well for us as a couple, which is always growing together. When I first started in the coaching industry, I was doing an Anthony Robbins program. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. And I'm doing an Anthony Robbins program. I'm flying away to Fiji. I'm on his island and, hanging out with Anthony Robbins. I'm doing this program. And I noticed that I was changing a lot and you weren't a part of that program. And I remember we made a decision for me to not continue doing that program because I felt like it was not helping our relationship. And I think were you going through some health stuff at the time?
I was, yeah.
Yeah, you were going through some health stuff. And then I was like on this like intense mission, Tony Robbins, which by the way, I love Tony. I think he's phenomenal. But in that period, it just wasn't working for us.
Yeah, I think everyone's probably heard the marriage advice before of like, you don't just marry one person because that one person changes so much across the lifetime of your relationship. And sometimes that happens at core events, you become parents or you go through the death of someone close or just, midlife crisis that happens.
Or you start a business.
Well, what I was going to say is when you're an entrepreneur and you're always putting yourself in a growth trajectory, a lot of times those changes happen more often than maybe if you weren't in a kind of growth type of role.
Yeah.
And I think that it's those transition points that are the hardest on marriages because you kind of have to re-get to know the person again. And also if you're the one changing, you feel like, well, they don't understand me. They're not giving me space for that. And it just can create so much conflict.
Yeah.
And also too, it's just, you're not a part of the process. Like I remember before we kind of instituted this role in our relationship, you would just come home and make these pronouncements of like what was changing.
A pronouncement? Or is that an announcement?
An announcement, a declaration. Like I remember like your first life coaching certificate. At the time, you were working in a corporate full-time role and like you were like, I just want to upskill. And then you came home and
I did a weekend training.
Without telling me anything, you were like, I'm quitting my job and I'm starting a full-time coaching business. And I was just like, what? Like, catch me up. And obviously you'd been through a highly transformational experience. But it's because I hadn't been there.
Well, you actually did a lot of the content of that. I remember the coaching program.
Well, I did,
because you weren't doing it. Like, we hadn't paid for you to do it because we couldn't afford it.
Yeah. But
you actually, I remember, went through a lot of the trainings, listened to the CDs because that's what it was built on. It was sick. Listened to the CD packs, read a lot of the things, like did some of the trainings, like you actively got involved. So what we're saying is, like, it's more having the conversation with your spouse if you're married or in a relationship of going like, I'm going on this journey. What could it look like for us to go on this journey together? Like, it may not be them doing the entire program, but I will say that we have continually sacrificed to make that happen.
Because we do work together, we personally made the decision that we would only attend programs together. And that is really hard when you've got kids, because it's so much easier for one person to travel and have the kids at home. To try and work that out with the kids has been really hard. But I will say it has really, really made our relationship work well, I think.
Yes, totally. So that's a big one. That's a big one. I feel like, because that partnership, like who you marry or who you do life with, is so important. It's the most important decision, I think, on this earth in terms of your trajectory and your business. And so having your partner, or just having those conversations of like, what could it look like for us to grow together, it has been a huge benefit for us.
Yeah. And I think, like, if you're an entrepreneur who maybe your spouse or partner isn't involved in the business, is just like, I think it's easy to get frustrated that they don't understand. But just maybe it's taking them more on the process of how you got to where you're feeling or what's happening.
And I think as well, sometimes when you go away by yourself and you do a program or something, they don't have the context or the experience or the emotional experience that you went through. And so realizing that, I'm saying this because I'm terrible at this, because I'll come home and I'll be like super intense about the changes that I've made in my life and what I'm going to do. And you're like, whoa, let's just
catch me up.
Catch me up. So, but as much as you can, like trying to do the journey together, I think is a great principle that we've continued to do this year. That's worked well. Number 9,
we're coming in, guys.
Coming in, ha!
Yeah.
Oh, number 9. This is good. The final principle we'll finish on, which is a business and life principle, which is the idea that consistency compounds success. And I think to go from being an amateur to being a pro, one of the biggest differences is consistency. And I feel like you have really taught me this as well, because sometimes I'm not as consistent as you. Like, for example, even the podcast.
Yeah, you'll just be like, we'll just miss it for a few
I'll be like, let's just not do one this week. I'm so exhausted. And you're like,
get up there. Here's the topic. Talk about this.
You're like, babe, you said you were going to start a podcast. You have to deliver one every single week. And here I am delivering the next podcast.
Well done.
Yeah, well done. Well done. But it's that consistency, it does compound.
Yes, it 100% does. I mean, it's anything, if you're building towards momentum and towards the snowball, whether it's social media or a podcast or a weekly email newsletter, or it's you're building community, there has to be a level of consistency and I think minimum intensity in terms of like whether it's that weekly podcast or weekly email at minimum. Because if you don't, you're just not building up that energy behind what you're sharing. But the benefit of it is that as you build it, it does become a snowball.
It does, completely.
And it really does bring a level of momentum to your business.
Yeah.
I think the other thing under this principle, and something that I feel like we've relearnt and continued to has been reconfirmed to us, is just staying consistency on your expertise.
Yeah.
Like
this is a big one.
As much as we like just shared a marriage tip or whatever, it's not like you built your, expert business around speaking and selling on stage, and now we're also offering marriage
counseling
courses and
stuff,
you know what I mean? Like, I think sometimes as entrepreneurs is that shiny object syndrome of like, hey, well, now I've covered this, I could also teach this. Sometimes it works well, but if it's too pivoted away from what you're doing, you really are essentially starting another business.
Yeah, and you really confuse your audience.
Correct. You have to build up a different audience for it.
Yeah, definitely. So being consistent on that message on that
Yes.
messaging. I look at the most successful people in our world who run expert businesses. They've been doing the same messaging or the same message.
Yes.
Sure, the messaging has changed, but it's
Right.
still the same topic essentially. And they've been doing that for 10, 15 years.
Yeah. And that's, again, then you get known in the market.
Yeah.
Your reputation precedes you as someone, you're the person to go to on that topic. And I think if
yeah.
you're constantly changing topics,
Yeah.
it is hard to build that reputation over time.
And I will say, I will preface that with, I've been through many niches.
Sure.
I started out as a life coach, then I went into career coaching, and then I went into leadership coaching, and then I went into productivity coaching.
Yeah.
Remember
that?
They don't remember it. They don't even know I taught productivity a lot of the time.
Like,
you remember it.
I know, because I get all these people going like, what's it like being married to such an organized person? I mean, like, I don't know.
So the context of this, guys, is I used to run a program called the Productivity Academy, which essentially taught to how to be productive.
I honestly feel like you could rebrand and re-release it of like productivities for entrepreneurs with squirrel brains.
Yes.
That was you were very good at that.
I learned as I built the program and worked with people, I realized that program was for people who were naturally unorganized.
Very creative. Maybe
squirrel
ADHD.
mind, maybe a little bit of ADHD. And I'm like, I built this program for them as opposed to people who are naturally organized and they,
more linear
and they're like, everyone else, you have to do it like us. And I was like, I'm not like you. So I built a different type of program. So,
and it helps a lot of people.
It does. It does. We've had good feedback on the program, even though I don't sell it anymore. But anyway.
Sorry. I'm taking you on a tangent.
No, it's fine. It's fine. We're doing a little bit of squirrel. So I'm talking about consistency. Consistency compounds. That is being a pro. That's the basis of being a pro, is like, I'm going to show up consistently. And maybe that's, I'm going to send a weekly email at basically the same time every week, no matter how I feel. Right? No matter how I feel, no matter what's happening in my life, I'm frigging delivering this puppy to my audience.
I feel like that stops perfectionism. Is that commitment to consistency, because sometimes you'll put out your weekly email and it's really not that good, but the fact that you put it out, it forces you to grow in your craft and in your decision that it's going out no matter what.
And it just gets better and better as you develop it. And because sometimes you think, I'm going to get it like super high quality before I release it.
Right.
But it's like, it doesn't get high quality until you release it a number of times.
Because, you get better as you do it more often.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that commitment to consistency helps that as well.
Babe, it's been awesome having you on the podcast. I hope you guys have enjoyed our conversation about our 9 principles. If you haven't listened to part 1, definitely go and listen to part 1. And if you are a parent of a child or a teen and you sense maybe even in yourself or in your child that they're how would someone know if they're a highly sensitive person?
So high sensitivity is a temperament or a trait. It's not a medical diagnosis or anything like that. And essentially it's people who are more aware and also responsive to sensory stimulation in the environment. So people think of it as emotional sensitivity, but what it actually is, they're actually absorbing more information from the environment than other people, and they have a depth of processing. So they really are trying to integrate this onslaught of information into what they already understand. So it's typically your deep thinkers, the people who are questioning the meaning of life, people who love, creativity, who are having existential crises, who maybe are more in touch with their emotions than others. That is the type of the high sensitivity temperament.
Yeah. And the reason I bring that up is because your book, Turn Down the Noise, book.com, is built for people, first of all, people who have highly sensitive children, or you're a highly sensitive person. But obviously it's built for all parents who want to understand how to create emotional health in their family. And so if that's you and you've resonated with Sarah.
Feel overstimulated.
And you feel overstimulated as a parent, definitely go and grab that pre-order bonus. Just go to turndownthenoisebook.com. You won't regret it. Like I'm telling you, when the book comes out and ships, it's phenomenal. And I'm just excited about you releasing it to the world. And because it's an incredible piece of work.
Thank you, babe.
That I'm incredibly proud of, even though I didn't do anything for it.
No.
So
that's good. And I mean, I'm very grateful, because who wouldn't want the best salesman in the world talking about their next product?
So good. So good. So head over there, grab the bonuses. You'll get them instantly. The destimulation pack. And what was the other one?
So how to create a sensory calming pack, and also basically what to do when your child or teen is overstimulated. It's a free guide.
Very good. Very good. Guys, thanks for being a part of the Expert Edge. We'll see you next week.
Bye, guys.